It's the longest-running sci-fi show in history, but its journey through time has been darker than you think. These are the secrets the BBC never wanted in the spotlight. Fact 1.
Edges of your consciousness, fragments of yourself from the past.
In the 1960s and 70s, the BBC had a policy of wiping tapes to save space and money. As a result, they erased dozens of original Doctor Who episodes, many of which are now lost forever. These episodes featured the first and second Doctors, played by William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. Entire serials like The Daleks' Master Plan and The Power of the Daleks were thrown away. Archivists and fans have spent decades trying to recover what they can, often from overseas broadcasters. Some episodes have been partially reconstructed using audio recordings or telesnaps. The BBC has never fully apologised for the losses, calling it a product of the time. To this day, key moments from the show's early history remain missing. One of Britain's most treasured cultural exports has permanent holes in its legacy, and the decision to destroy them came from within the BBC itself. Fact 2.
I'm the Doctor.
No, Doctor, I'm the Doctor, and I say that you're not fit.
You may be a Doctor, but I'm the Doctor.
Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, is one of the most iconic incarnations in the show's history. But behind the scenes, the pressure of the role nearly broke him. During his later seasons, he began to clash frequently with producers and writers. He was exhausted, isolated, and felt the production was pulling in too many creative directions. At one point during season 17, he seriously considered walking off set and not returning.
Duncan, what are you doing, for heaven's sake? That's a Louis Cairns.
The tension affected not only his performance, but also his health and morale. The BBC worked hard to keep the conflict quiet, fearing fan backlash. Baker ultimately stayed to finish his run, but he later admitted he wasn't really there emotionally. His departure was wrapped in celebration, but behind the scarf he was struggling. The face of Doctor Who nearly vanished without warning. Fact 3.
Your infantile behaviour is beyond a joke. No.
William Hartnell originated the role of the Doctor in 1963, but only a year into the series, producers began discussing replacing him. Hartnell had health issues, including arteriosclerosis, which caused memory loss and mood swings. He also frequently clashed with crew members and misunderstood the tone of the show. Behind the scenes, tensions were mounting, but the BBC didn't want public scandal. Instead of firing him outright, they carefully waited until 1966 to introduce regeneration.
Don't talk too soon. The mind is indestructible. So is the Trimaker.
This narrative solution allowed a new actor to take over, avoiding controversy. The idea was revolutionary, but born out of desperation. Hartnell's legacy is honoured now, but at the time the BBC was quietly pushing him out. The show's most genius plot device came from an uncomfortable truth. Fact 4.
That was a nice nap. Now, down to business. I'm a bit worried about the temporal flicker in Sector 13.
In the 1980s, producer John Nathan Turner ran Doctor Who during a turbulent period. Though he helped extend the show's life, his tenure was marred by backstage drama. He was known for clashing with actors, recycling ideas, and hiring friends with little experience. What fans didn't know was that the BBC launched internal investigations into the working environment.
Oh, tonight is your lucky night. You are our 10 billionth customer.
Nathan Turner was eventually pressured to step away from active production near the show's cancellation. His assistant, Gary Downey, was also accused of inappropriate behaviour, though never formally charged. The BBC kept these details private, worried it would damage the brand. Decades later, former cast and crew began speaking out about the toxic culture. The darkness behind the TARDIS doors was far deeper than fans imagined, and the BBC did everything it could to bury it. Fact 5.
She is alive.
Which is more than can be said for Arthur the Freeze-Dried.
In 1989, after years of declining ratings and internal disputes, the BBC quietly cancelled Doctor Who. They never announced it as a formal cancellation, only as a hiatus. Fans waited patiently, believing it would return soon. But behind closed doors, executives had no real plans to revive it. The show simply vanished from schedules, with no final episode or send-off. Cast and crew were given no closure, and fans were left in limbo. The BBC hoped avoiding a public announcement would reduce backlash. But instead, it created a deep rift with the show's passionate fan base. When Doctor Who returned in 2005, it had been gone for over 15 years, and the BBC never truly addressed why it disappeared in silence. Fact 6.
I'm not part of the war. I swear to you, I never was.
You're a Time Lord.
After the 1989 cancellation, the BBC licensed Doctor Who to American studios. This led to the 1996 TV movie co-produced with Universal Pictures. They cast Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, but altered core elements of the mythology. One major change? The Doctor was hinted to be half-human, a detail never seen before or after. The TARDIS interior became gothic and cinematic, resembling a Hollywood set. The BBC hoped the movie would relaunch the show for both British and US audiences, but fans rejected many of the creative decisions, and ratings were poor in the UK. The BBC quietly distanced itself from the film afterward, treating it as a one-off. Despite McGann's strong performance, the American experiment was shelved. It took nearly a decade to recover from that failed regeneration. Fact 7. In the early 1990s, Doctor Who was effectively dead. No show, no revival in sight. BBC executives debated ending the mythology altogether by officially killing off the character. Internal memos suggested a final regeneration, where the Doctor would die for good. Writers proposed storylines involving the destruction of Gallifrey and the Doctor sacrificing himself. But BBC management hesitated, worried about damaging future licensing deals. Merchandise, books and audio dramas were still generating income. So rather than closing the book, they left the door ajar with ambiguity. Had this plan moved forward, Doctor Who might never have returned in 2005. It was nearly the final stop in the Time Lord's journey. The Doctor's survival depended more on business decisions than creative ones. Fact 8.
Nesting consciousness? Easy.
Although Doctor Who returned triumphantly in 2005, it nearly fell apart before it began. Russell T Davies pitched the revival multiple times to skeptical BBC execs. They feared science fiction was too niche and too uncool for modern audiences. Davies had to promise emotional realism, modern production, and stronger character drama. Even then, the budget was slashed repeatedly during pre-production. The BBC forced the team to reuse sets, limit VFX shots, and cut episodes. Some higher-ups doubted Christopher Eckleston's casting, claiming he lacked mainstream appeal. Despite these obstacles, the show premiered to massive success. But behind the scenes, it was one decision away from being shelved. The 9th Doctor almost never stepped out of the TARDIS. Fact 9. After just one season, Christopher Eccleston left Doctor Who, and the BBC lied about why. They initially claimed it was planned from the start, but that wasn't true. Eccleston later revealed he clashed with senior figures over working conditions and creative control. He felt bullied, unsupported, and exhausted by the relentless production pace. Fearing damage to the brand, the BBC released misleading statements to the press.
No one's going to stop you, because you've bred a human race which doesn't bother to ask questions.
This created confusion and tension with fans and the actor himself. Eccleston stayed silent for years, refusing to attend conventions or reunions. Only much later did he begin to re-engage with the fandom. His portrayal was groundbreaking, but his exit was clouded in corporate secrecy. A regeneration born from conflict, not choice. Fact 10.
Like popped out of my timeline because there's a great big time schism on its way caused by you.
When Chris Chibnall took over as showrunner and Jodie Whittaker became the 13th Doctor, the BBC had high hopes. But internal emails show they also had concerns about fan backlash and falling viewership. Several board members allegedly questioned whether the franchise was creatively exhausted. The BBC debated putting the show on another indefinite hiatus. Jodie Whittaker's first season had strong initial ratings, but they declined over time.
Quite the strength of character, this incarnation.
Critics were divided on tone, storytelling, and canon changes. Merchandise sales also dropped, causing financial pressure. The BBC chose to continue, but with tighter control and shorter series orders. The future of Doctor Who was once again in doubt, despite a global audience. Even now, the TARDIS travels under constant scrutiny from its own creators.